Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is our show on the internet, Piqueo Bites, and I'm your host, Jerry Sarmiento, transmitting from beautiful Northwest Houston in Cypress, Texas. And today I have a very, very special show. Of course, every show is very special for us, but today we're basically launching our press release or our announcement of our new restaurant, which is already 5 weeks old. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we did to transform it from what it was before. And I'm going to tell you a lot about our cuisine and our menu. So with that, please, why don't you come with me? What is Peruvian cuisine? That's a question that many people ask me, and that's something that is very hard to explain in just a couple of sentences. So let me tell you that, first of all, Peruvian cuisine is one of the most varied cuisines in the world, because of when you try Peruvian food, you're not only trying the food, but you are basically experiencing a fascinating evolution of and melding of cultures and ingredients from many parts of the world. Starting with the Incas. The Inca civilization was an amazing civilization, and they conquered most of Latin America, most of South America, sorry, because they were, number one, they were tremendous warriors, number two, they were tremendous engineers, and number three, they developed techniques to store foods so they can survive droughts and severe conditions for many years. They developed very fascinating techniques on how to freeze dry foods and how to store them at high altitudes so they could last for very long periods of time. They could feed their armies for very long periods of time. So with all of that, they obviously were very well equipped to conquer most of the continent of South America. What did they have to start with? They had a number of different ingredients that we still have today. Potatoes originated in Peru. We have about 3,000 different kinds of potatoes in Peru. Ajíes, which is our term for chilies. Chili is actually a term used in Mexico for hot peppers. We call them ajíes. We have a number of different ajíes, and I'm going to show you some when we move to the kitchen in a few minutes. Fish, we have a tremendous variety of fish. The Incas ate a lot of fish, where, of course, Lima is on the Pacific Ocean coast. In the 1500s, we had the invasion from the Spaniards. They came and they conquered Peru, and with that they brought a number of different things. They brought cattle, things that we had never seen before, cows and pigs and goats. They brought with them limes and lemons. They brought garlic and onions, and the melding of all of that with our own Inca, pre-Inca and Inca ingredients transform into what we call the cocina criolla or Creole cuisine. Then in the 1600s, we have the arrival of slaves from Africa, and with that we had also new ingredients, new ways of preparing foods. Actually, our anticucho, which is the skewered beef heart, originated with the slaves that came from Africa in the 1600s. In the 19th century, fast forward to the 19th century, after independence from the Spaniards, that was in 1821, actually there was a decree by Jose San Martin, our liberator, that allowed the free immigration to Peru. So we had tons of people coming to Peru looking for fortune. During the French Revolution, many heads rolled, and many people escaped. And among the people that escaped, there were lots of cooks that were cooking for the royalty in France, and they were looking for new places to develop a new life. And many of them came to Peru, and that's how we learned to do mousses and to use garlic and mirepoix and things like that for incorporating into our own cuisine. By 1857, we had around 20,000 Europeans living in Lima alone. We have French, Scots, Italians, Brits, Germans, and some from the Nordic countries. So it was a tremendous evolution of our cuisine with those influences. But probably the biggest impact in our cuisine was in 1849 when we received the first wave of Chinese immigrants into Peru. And Chinese, you say, why the Chinese are coming to Peru? Well, that was around the time when slavery was abolished in Peru, and all of the Africans that had come to Peru, they working the plantation fields. They were liberated and they went looking for paying jobs. So they had to be replaced by somebody. There were agreements between governments. We basically brought a number of Chinese workers. They were actually working in very, very harsh conditions, but it was kind of a transition between slavery and paid labor. Today, the Chinese in Peru constitute about 10% of the total population, which is really significant. Actually, when I grew up, I had many classmates that were of Chinese origin. It's very interesting to see them. They are very full-blooded Peruvians, but with very marked features, Chinese features. It's a very interesting thing. They brought all their techniques of cooking, their ways of cooking. Of course, they didn't have the ingredients from home, so they adapted a lot of our Peruvian ingredients to make their foods. That was not the only arrival of Chinese immigrants. The next wave was after the Republic of 1912 was established, when we had another wave of Chinese immigrants. Of course, during World War II, we had another wave. Later from that, in 1949, after the establishment of the communism, we had the third or fourth wave. And finally, between 1997 and 1999, when there was the threat of communism returning to mainland, that's when we got a lot of immigrants from Hong Kong and Macau. So they are definitely full-blooded Peruvians, but they brought their cooking utensils, they brought their woks, and they used Peruvian ingredients to make their foods. Later, in 1899, actually in 1899, we had also the immigration or the arrival of the first wave of Japanese immigrants to Peru. And that was another tremendous influence in our cuisine. The first restaurants in Peru of Japanese owners basically showed us a different way of eating seafood, which at the time was not consumed widely in Peru, but we learned quickly how good it was. One of the greatest examples is, and one of the dishes we have here at Piqueo, is tiradito, which is extremely interesting fusion, because you can see a part sashimi is not sashimi, but you have also a part of Italian crudo, and it's not an Italian crudo. So you have an influence, Japanese influence, and an Italian influence. That's one dish. We have our tallarín saltado, which has Italian influence and Chinese influence, cooking spaghetti, basically a pasta with different ingredients like soy sauce and vinegar and tomatoes and onions, all stir-fried in a wok. But I'm getting a little bit too much into what our menu looks like, so what I want to do now is show you some of our ingredients. So why don't you follow me to the kitchen?